There once lived a man named Farid in a town that rested between wide fields and dusty roads. The town was not large, but it was full of life. Merchants sold fruit in the morning markets, children ran through narrow streets, and in the evenings the smell of warm bread drifted from small bakeries. Most people in the town lived simple lives. But Farid was different. Farid was known by everyone, though not for the reasons people usually hope to be remembered. He was known as the man who was never satisfied. If the sun shone brightly, Farid complained about the heat. If the wind blew softly, he complained about the dust. If the day was calm and peaceful, he complained that nothing exciting ever happened in his life. People often said that Farid had everything a man could reasonably want, yet somehow he behaved as if life had given him nothing at all. Farid owned a comfortable house near the center of the town. It was not the biggest house, but it was well built and safe. His small garden grew figs and pomegranates every summer. Yet whenever someone visited him, Farid would sigh and say the same thing. "This house is too small. I deserve something much better." He had a steady job working for a merchant who traded grain and spices across nearby villages. The job paid well enough for Farid to live comfortably, but he always complained about it. "My boss does not appreciate my talent," he would say. "I should have a position far greater than this." Farid had neighbors who greeted him kindly each morning. But he rarely returned their kindness. "They are noisy," he would say. "I cannot live peacefully with people like this around me." Farid had friends who invited him to gatherings, shared meals with him, and tried to include him in their celebrations. But even among friends, Farid found reasons to be unhappy. "This food is not cooked well. The music is too loud. The conversation is boring." Slowly, over time, something began to change. His friends stopped inviting him. His neighbors greeted him less often. Even his co-workers avoided spending too much time near him. It was not because Farid was cruel. It was because his constant dissatisfaction made every moment around him feel heavy. One evening, after another long day of complaining about his work, Farid sat outside his house watching the sun disappear behind the hills. A young boy ran past him laughing loudly. Behind the boy, his father walked with a tired smile on his face. The father was a farmer who worked hard every day in the fields. His clothes were dusty, his hands rough, and his house was smaller than Farid's. Yet the man looked peaceful. Farid watched them with irritation. "How can someone like him look happy?" he muttered. The next morning Farid walked through the market on his way to work. The market was busy with the usual sounds of trade. Vendors called out their prices. Children chased each other between stalls. Women bargained loudly with merchants. Near the edge of the market square sat an old man. He wore simple clothes and leaned on a wooden staff. Many people passed him without noticing. But something about the old man's calm expression caught Farid's attention. The old man was smiling quietly as he watched the busy crowd move around him. Farid stopped. "Why are you smiling?" he asked. The old man looked up. "Because the world is beautiful." Farid frowned. "Beautiful?" "Yes." Farid gestured toward the noisy market. "This place is chaotic. People are shouting. The air is dusty. Nothing here is beautiful." The old man studied him carefully. "You see chaos," he said gently. "But I see life." Farid crossed his arms. "You sound like a poet." The old man chuckled softly. "No. I simply pay attention." Farid shook his head. "You must not have many problems." The old man raised an eyebrow. "Why do you say that?" "Because anyone with real problems would not be smiling like that." The old man remained silent for a moment. Then he asked a question. "Tell me something. Are you happy?" Farid laughed bitterly. "Happy? Of course not." "Why not?" Farid did not hesitate. "My house is too small. My job is frustrating. My neighbors are annoying. My life is ordinary." The old man listened patiently. When Farid finished speaking, the old man asked another question. "Do you believe happiness is something the world must give you?" "Of course," Farid replied. "Where else would it come from?" The old man tapped his staff gently against the ground. "Perhaps that is the problem." Farid frowned. "What do you mean?" The old man leaned forward slightly. "Perhaps happiness is not something the world gives. Perhaps it is something you choose." Farid shook his head. "That makes no sense." "Does it not?" "If happiness were a choice," Farid said, "everyone would simply choose it." The old man smiled again. "Most people forget they can." Farid was growing impatient. "So what are you saying?" "I am saying," the old man replied calmly, "that you have trained your mind to search for what is wrong." Farid scoffed. "I am simply realistic." The old man looked toward the sky. Realism and gratitude are not enemies. Farid turned away. I do not have time for riddles. But before he could walk away, the old man spoke again. Would you like to try an experiment? Farid paused. What kind of experiment? A simple one. Farid hesitated. Then curiosity won. What do I have to do? The old man smiled. For the next 7 days you must say, thank you, for everything that happens. Farid laughed. That is ridiculous. Is it? Yes. What harm could it do? Farid thought for a moment. Fine, he said. 7 days. The old man nodded. But there is one rule. What rule? You must say it sincerely. Farid rolled his eyes. This will not change anything. The old man's smile grew slightly wider. Perhaps not. But perhaps it will change you. Farid walked away shaking his head. This old man is strange, he muttered. Yet as he continued toward work, the challenge lingered in his mind. 7 days. Just 7 days. He did not realize that this small experiment would soon begin changing everything he thought he understood about life. The next morning, Farid woke up earlier than usual. The first thing he remembered was the strange challenge the old man had given him. 7 days. 7 days of saying, thank you for everything. Farid sat on the edge of his bed and sighed. This is foolish, he muttered. Still, something about the challenge bothered him enough that he decided to try it. Not because he believed it would work, but because he wanted to prove the old man wrong. He stepped outside his house. The morning air was cool and quiet. As he closed his door, he noticed a small problem immediately. A stray cat had knocked over a pot in his garden during the night. Dirt had spilled across the ground and one of his plants was broken. Normally, this would have been the perfect reason for Farid to complain. He opened his mouth. Then he remembered the rule. He forced the words out. Thank you. The words felt awkward, unnatural. He looked around as if someone might be watching him. This is ridiculous, he whispered. Still, he picked up the broken pot and placed it back near the wall. As he walked toward the market, the sun slowly rose over the hills. Golden light spread across the streets, touching rooftops and windows. Farid noticed it for a brief moment. Then he caught himself. Thank you, he said quietly. The words still felt strange. But he continued walking. At the market, Farid stopped by a fruit stall to buy breakfast. The merchant handed him a small bag of figs. These are very sweet today, the merchant said. Farid usually ignored small conversations like this. But today he remembered the experiment. Thank you, he replied. The merchant smiled slightly. You're welcome. Something about the exchange felt different. Not dramatic. Just slightly lighter. Later that morning, Farid arrived at work. His employer immediately gave him a long list of tasks that needed to be finished before the end of the day. Normally Farid would complain. He almost did. But again he remembered the rule. Thank you, he said reluctantly. His employer looked surprised. Farid had never responded that way before. The day continued. Several small inconveniences appeared as usual. A delivery arrived late. A worker made a mistake in the storage records. The weather became hotter than expected. Each time Farid felt the familiar urge to complain. And each time he forced himself to say the same 2 words. Thank you. At first it felt like he was lying. But something curious began happening. The more he said the words, the less irritated he felt. By the end of the day, he realized he had spent several hours without complaining once. That had never happened before. When Farid returned home that evening, he sat outside in his garden again. The broken plant from the morning still rested beside the wall. He stared at it. Normally he would see it as proof that his day had begun badly. But now something else came to his mind. The plant could grow again. The soil was still rich. The garden was still his. Thank you, he said softly. The next morning he woke up with less resistance toward the challenge. It was only the second day, but the words came a little easier. At the market, the same fruit merchant greeted him. Good morning, the man said cheerfully. Good morning, Farid replied. Then he added something unexpected. Thank you for the figs yesterday. They were excellent. The merchant looked genuinely pleased. You're welcome, my friend. Farid continued walking. Something inside him felt warmer. That day at work, he noticed something he had never paid attention to before. The workers around him were constantly helping each other. One man carried heavy sacks for another. Another worker fixed a broken cart without being asked. People were supporting each other quietly throughout the day. Farid realized that before the experiment, he had only noticed mistakes. Now he was noticing effort. By the third day, Farid's habit of gratitude began spreading into places he did not expect. A neighbor waved to him in the morning. "Thank you," Farid said with a smile. The neighbor blinked in surprise. Then he smiled back. Later that afternoon, Farid saw the same farmer he had once envied walking through the market with his son. The boy was laughing again just like before. This time Farid noticed something else. The father looked tired. Very tired. His clothes were dusty. His hands were rough from work. But he still smiled at his son with complete warmth. For the first time, Farid understood something important. That man was not happy because life was easy. He was happy because he appreciated what he had. That night Farid sat quietly in his garden. The stars above the town were bright. For years he had lived in the same house, under the same sky. But he had never truly noticed it. "Thank you," he whispered. By the 5th day, something remarkable began happening. Farid's mind started searching for things to appreciate automatically. When the wind moved gently through the trees, he noticed it. When someone held a door open for him, he noticed it. When the smell of fresh bread drifted through the street, he noticed it. The world had not changed, but the way he saw it had. On the 6th day, Farid returned to the market and saw the old man sitting in the same place beside the square. The old man looked up and smiled knowingly. "So," he said calmly, "how is the experiment going?" Farid sat down beside him. "I think something strange is happening," he admitted. The old man chuckled. "What kind of strange?" "For the first time in years, I feel lighter." The old man nodded. "That is gratitude." Farid looked thoughtful. "But nothing in my life has actually changed." "Exactly." Farid frowned slightly. "Then why does everything feel different?" The old man tapped his staff gently against the ground. "Because your attention has changed." Farid stared at the busy market around them. People talking. Children running. Merchants selling food. It was the same scene he had seen thousands of times. Yet now it felt alive. "What happens after the 7 days?" Farid asked. The old man smiled gently. "That depends on you." "What do you mean?" "You can return to complaining, or you can keep seeing the world the way it truly is." Farid looked down at his hands. For years he had believed happiness depended on changing his circumstances. A bigger house, a better job, better neighbors. Now he was beginning to suspect something else. Perhaps happiness had been waiting for him all along. He had simply been too busy complaining to notice it. And tomorrow would be the 7th day. On the 7th morning, Farid woke up before the sun had fully risen. For a moment he lay quietly in bed, staring at the ceiling. The experiment was almost finished. 7 days. At first he had agreed only to prove the old man wrong. But now something inside him felt different. Not dramatically different, just calmer. He stepped outside his house and breathed in the cool morning air. The streets were still quiet. A few birds moved across the sky, and the early sunlight slowly touched the rooftops of the town. "Thank you," Farid whispered. The words came naturally now. Not forced. Not awkward. Just simple. He walked toward the market like he had done every day of the week. Along the way he noticed something he had ignored for years. The town was beautiful in small ways. A baker was opening his shop, and the warm smell of bread drifted into the street. A woman watered flowers in front of her window. 2 children carried wooden buckets of water while laughing about something only they understood. None of these things were extraordinary. Yet together they created something Farid had never truly seen before. Life. At the market square, the old man was sitting in the same place beside the fountain. He looked up as Farid approached. "Well," the old man said with a gentle smile. "The 7th day has arrived." Farid sat beside him. "Yes. And what have you discovered?" Farid thought carefully before answering. "At first I believed happiness came from changing my life. And now? Now I think happiness comes from noticing it." The old man nodded slowly. "That is a good beginning." Farid looked around the market. People were moving through the square just like every other day. Merchants were setting up their stalls. Children were running between the stands. Nothing had changed. Yet everything felt different. "I used to believe my life was full of problems," Farid said quietly. "And now? Now I see that most of those problems were inside my own mind." The old man tapped his staff gently against the ground. "That realization changes many lives." Farid looked thoughtful. "For years I blamed everything around me. My job. My house. My neighbors. My luck." The old man smiled. "And now you see something else." "Yes." "What do you see?" Farid took a slow breath. "I see that I was the one refusing happiness." The old man's eyes softened with approval. "Gratitude is a powerful lens," he said. "It allows people to see the same world, in a completely different way. Farid leaned back and watched the fountain water flow quietly. I thought happiness was something rare, he said. Something only lucky people experience. The old man shook his head. Happiness visits everyone. Then why do so many people miss it? Because they are too busy looking for what is missing. Farid sat silently for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been forming in his mind all week. Why did you choose me? The old man chuckled softly. I did not choose you. Farid looked confused. Then why did you speak to me that day? Because you were ready to hear something different. Farid watched the busy market again. People laughed. Friends greeted each other. Children chased pigeons near the fountain. These things had always been here. But he had never noticed them before. Do you think the change will last? Farid asked. That depends on you, the old man replied. Why? Because gratitude is like a muscle. Farid raised an eyebrow. A muscle? Yes. If you practice it, it grows stronger. And if you stop, it becomes weak again. Farid nodded slowly. I understand. The old man stood up carefully. Then my work here is finished. Farid looked up. Wait. The old man paused. Yes. Thank you. The old man smiled warmly. You are welcome. Then he walked away slowly through the market crowd. Farid watched him disappear between the stalls. He never saw the old man again. But the lesson remained. In the days that followed, Farid continued practicing the habit he had learned. Not because of the challenge, but because he had discovered something valuable. His house had not grown bigger. His job had not changed. His neighbors were still the same people. Yet his life felt completely different. He spoke more kindly with the people around him. He laughed more often. He noticed small moments that once passed by unseen. His neighbors began greeting him again. Old friends returned to visit. Even his co-workers seemed happier when he was nearby. One evening, months later, Farid sat outside his house watching the sun set behind the hills. The same place where he had once complained about everything. A young boy ran past him laughing loudly. Behind the boy walked his father, the same farmer Farid had once envied. The farmer nodded politely as he passed. Farid smiled. Good evening, he said. Good evening, the farmer replied. Farid watched them disappear down the road. Then he looked at the sky above the quiet town. The colors of sunset stretched across the horizon. Orange, gold, soft purple clouds drifting slowly through the evening air. Farid took a deep breath. Thank you, he whispered. And for the first time in his life, he truly meant it.